Eubank versus Benn. We're finally here, guys. I mean, it's been talked about, it's been discussed. It's been a fight that, drawn some controversy in the past over the alleged, I guess we call it alleged. I mean, he did fail a drug test and cleared his name, whatever. Make what you will of that. The drug test of failures of Conor Benn. There were times where we didn't know this fight was going to happen, and now, the UK made it happen. These are two big names in the UK. Weighing is done as well. Controversy at the weighing. Of course, we needed to have one more controversy there between being these guys have had all the controversy that they've had. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV. So let's jump right into it, guys. First and foremost, I will say this, okay? It's a testament to the UK boxing scene, the amount of publicity and popularity that this fight has gained, because if you have two sons of former world champions, there will only be so much curiosity in any other country, including the US, and it will not generate this kind of fanfare, money, all this other stuff. It is a testament to the popularity of boxing in the UK that two sons of former world champions, both sons of which have never, nor will probably ever win a major world title, are in a main event headliner that is going to be in a football or aka soccer stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I find that fascinating. I find that incredible. And I find that really a credit to the UK boxing fans. And that's not to say these guys are bad fighters. They're actually not bad fighters. Eubank especially, particularly, has wins over Liam Smith, James DeGale, Matt Korobov. Granted, they were kind of compromised at the points that when he fought them. But the Liam Smith fight, though, he came off a knockout loss to Smith and came back and beat him in dominant fashion. So you got to give Eubank credit. With Conor Benn, he's got some quality wins on his record, but you're still kind of now wondering about that resume. Because the only time he had the quality wins was around the same time that he wound up failing the PED test. And yes, I know he cleared his name, all this us, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. But the eye test doesn't lie, guys. I mean, he looked sloppy and not sharp before that in his wins. Then he got really fast and sharp and powerful in a few wins in a row, which were his quality wins as well. And then he pops positive here, and then he's had a fight or two since, and going back to looking sloppy and not sharp and not fast. So I think there's still more of a question mark about Conor Benn, but the thing is this: he's a younger fighter. Eubank is a little older. I think Eubank's in his mid-30s. And Eubank, having struggled to make this weight, can you imagine? He probably would have never made 57. Granted, it would have been 2 years ago. Maybe he could have made 57 2 years ago. But for him to come in still a half pound over, regardless of the weight being at 160 at this point, it goes to show you that, he probably, if they would have tried to make the fight continually at 57 at this point, he would have never made it, And he would have had to pay even more in fines. $500,000 or a 500-pound fine for showing up a half pound overweight goes to show you again how much money these guys are actually making if you can afford to give fines that are higher than a lot of people's purses entirely in many of these kind of fights, So really, really interesting card, really, really interesting fight in that regard. Now, how do we get to the heart of it? I think Eubank is the better fighter, but is he hungry enough? Is he at that age? Can he draw the intensity? I don't know that Conor Benn has shown us yet what kind of talent he has against a higher level of opponent, because we haven't really seen him. Like I said, there's only that little bit of controversy, so it leads you to be curious. But I think Conor is hungrier. I think Conor is hungry. He's younger. When you're younger, you have that. You fight with a little bit more tenacity. You fight a little younger. You fight with, a tenacity and determination that kind of leaves you when you get older. And when you get older, you're trying to make fights into, sort of veteran affairs. You try to old man it and so on and so forth. I wonder, especially with the struggles that Chris Eubank has had in making weight, I wonder if he's going to try to old man this tonight, with sharp jabs, trying to move around and control the pace and whatnot. And I wonder if Conor, who is usually an emotionally charged guy and it works for him, I wonder if he's going to try to bring that pace. Because usually you would say it's not smart for a smaller guy to bring the pace to a bigger guy and try to entangle himself physically into a fight like that. You try to be smarter when you're the smaller guy. But when you have a guy who may be compromised at the weight like Eubank was, and maybe a little bit, drained from making the weight, and again, just older in general and may not be as hungry as you, maybe you take that chance. Maybe you do explode on him and see if he can handle the pace, even if you're smaller. Maybe it may be uncomfortable in the early rounds because Eubank is bigger physically, but you may wear him out in a few rounds, and then he's got nothing to hold you off with, and he's got nothing to physically handle you with, right? So I don't know exactly. I'm just thinking, if you're Conor Benn, what approach do you have? Because like I said, I don't think I think there's less question marks about Eubank and there's more question marks about Benn. But the fact that Benn is younger gives him more upside, and also politically, I think gives him more upside because there's more to gain from a Benn win at this point. Because Eubank, where's he going? Win or lose in his mid-30s, there's not a lot of places he can go at this point. I said neither guy had been a world champion. Eubank did have an IBO world title, which is respectable, but it's not one of the major sanctioning bodies, obviously. But nonetheless, still a massive affair, massive fight. And this is something that you got to bring up you got to give the UK kudos for. You got to give the UK credit for, because it's one of those things that, could only happen in the UK. This kind of fight of this kind of level. And what I'm saying is this kind of boxing level, not this kind of popularity level, because obviously popularity wise, Eubank and Benn's names, they transcend all boxing all over the world. And I think the even all the fight fans here from the US also knew about Eubank and Benn back in the day, and their last names will transcend here too, will resonate here too. But the Sons, we've had people, fight that, that were sons of or daughters of champions, and they generate a little, like Ali's daughter definitely did. When Ali's daughter fought Joe Frazier's daughter, that was really a massive affair. But Ali's daughter was champion, I think, at that point already. And then, but other than that, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. I know Buddy McGirt's son was fighting. He was a decent contender for a little while. Obviously, Chavez Jr., who brings a huge Mexican fan base to the point where, he gets a lot of sort of free fights. But again, is it son of champion versus son of champion when neither of them have won world titles? Even Chavez Jr., as controversially as he won this world title, I think they handed it to him somehow. That goes to show you that really almost anybody can be given a world championship in boxing at this point. Chavez Jr. was still became a world champion. So, and anything he was involved with, at least end of day, he ended up becoming a world champion. These guys, again, it fascinates me to see that an entire football stadium can be filled up by two sons of essentially legends, UK legends, and rightfully so that they are called UK legends. But what is the final outcome of today's fight? I want to lean towards Eubank and his jab and his boxing ability, but and again, I don't know. I'm not convinced of Conor Benn since the failed drug test. Regardless, again, that he cleared his name, he hasn't convinced me in the way he's looked since. And could Eubank old man it against him and beat him off the jab? I think to myself about the jab he used against Liam Smith, and I say, that kind of jab, if he just stays sharp with it, it could work for him. It could work. I know he's not working with what's his name, Crawford's trainer, Bo Mack anymore. I think I saw Jonathan Banks with him, so he does change trainers a lot. But again, the game plan can still stay the same. A disciplined jab, you hold off the shorter, smaller guy. You control the pace with him. Conor Benn isn't exactly a guy who's that creative in coming in the door. He comes into the front door pretty sporadically, so it's not like you have to look for him and find him to hold him off. You can kind of find him with the jab. So I want to lean towards the fight going some rounds. With Eubank probably winning it on points, but can Eubank go the distance? Can Eubank last the distance having drained himself like this? I don't know how much draining did he do. We saw the video on Instagram, but how much draining how many weeks has that draining been going on? Because in order to drain yourself like that, you've got to at least stay within striking distance of the weight for weeks. Before that, I think. How much did that drain you to even have to stay at that within striking distance of that? It wouldn't shock me to see Conor Benn explode, maybe even drop Eubank in this fight. But I'm going to lean towards Eubank. Conor Benn just hasn't done enough to convince me of a lot of things yet. So I'm going to still lean towards Eubank. But it should be entertaining regardless. And the UK fight fans, that's the thing that excites me the most. The atmosphere in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, that's what I'm looking forward most to seeing. Pretty good undercard as well. I'll give my thoughts after the fights. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV.